When you think of Goodfellas, Raging Bull, or The Wolf of Wall Street, you remember a master storyteller who shaped American cinema for over 50 years.
And we goes to Martin Scorsese, Boardwalk Empire.
This is Martin Scorsese's 8th nomination and first Emmy. I bet this award helps Marty pave his way into the film industry. Marty gave himself a cameo in the pilot. He played Steve Buscemi.
Martin Scorsese has worked with legends like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, but not every actor left his set smiling. Behind his award-winning films are stories of tension, frustration, and some seriously explosive fallouts. From A-list stars refusing to cut their hair, to a Hollywood icon suggesting Raging Bull should be nicer, Scorsese has clashed with actors in ways that nearly destroyed productions and ended careers. Why did Tom Cruise never return after The Color of Money? What made James Caan so furious that he walked away before filming even began? And which rising actress ghosted him at the worst possible moment? These are the actors Martin Scorsese absolutely hated working with.
Well, I think for me, it has to do with curiosity. It has to do with who you are. And if I'm going to work with you, I need to know you. That doesn't mean I need to know you as completely a personal life, personal, that sort of thing. But you know who you are, how you think, where you want to go with the art we're trying to make.
Tom Cruise. Back in the late 1980s, Tom Cruise was Hollywood's golden boy, riding high on the back-to-back success of Risky Business and Top. At just 24, he was already a bankable name, known for his charm, discipline, and a carefully managed image that screamed confidence. So when he signed on to co-star in The Color of Money alongside Paul Newman, it looked like a smart career move. But the director was Martin Scorsese, a filmmaker who thrived on emotional unpredictability, raw performances, and a camera style that didn't flatter vanity. Scorsese wasn't interested in preserving Cruise's image. The film was a follow-up to The Hustler from 1961, with Newman reprising his role as pool hustler Fast Eddie Felson. Cruise played Vincent Loria, a young hotshot whose swagger masks deep insecurity.
Come on, boy. Let's play.
Yeah, let's play. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
But what unfolded behind the scenes was a creative tug-of-war between a director who wanted vulnerability and an actor determined to stay polished. One of their earliest clashes came during the filming of the pool scenes. Cruise had trained for weeks, determined to perform every shot himself. He reportedly asked for wider angles to showcase his skill. Scorsese refused. His handheld, frenetic camera style zoomed in on reactions, not technique. To Scorsese, the pool table was a symbol of ego, not excellence. Cruise grew frustrated. He was precise, rehearsed, and loyal to the script. Scorsese pushed for looseness, spontaneity, and even improvised dialogue. He wanted Cruise to unravel, to stop being Tom Cruise. But Cruise wasn't ready to risk his brand that way. According to insiders, Scorsese saw this resistance as emotional stiffness and later shaped the film's final cut to tilt focus back to Newman, whose quieter, more introspective performance ultimately won him his first Oscar. The film was a critical and commercial success, but something broke between Cruise and Scorsese. They never worked together again. Cruise went on to work with directors like Stanley Kubrick and Michael Mann, who either fed his control or found ways to work around it. Scorsese, meanwhile, never publicly criticized Cruise, but his silence was telling. He often spoke of The Color of Money in terms of Newman's brilliance, rarely mentioning Cruise's performance at all. There's another actor, brash and unpredictable, who didn't just resist direction, he brought chaos straight to Scorsese's set. Mark Wahlberg. Not all of Martin Scorsese's on-set battles were about deep artistic philosophies. Some were just plain personal. And in the case of The Departed, the fight was over something as absurd as hair extensions. By 2006, Scorsese was preparing to direct The Departed, a gritty crime thriller set in Boston. The film was already stacked with Hollywood giants, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, and Jack Nicholson. Into this powerhouse cast walked Mark Wahlberg, a Boston native himself, who almost didn't join the project at all. Wahlberg was busy filming Invincible at the time, playing real-life NFL player Vince Papale. That role required him to grow out his natural hair. When Scorsese offered him the role of the sharp-tongued Sergeant Sean Dignam in The Departed, Wahlberg agreed. But there was a problem: the hair. To fit the role of Dignam, Wahlberg needed to have his hair cropped short, military style. But because of his Invincible commitment, he had to wear hair extensions instead. According to Wahlberg, Scorsese was furious when he saw them. The director, who is famously obsessed with visual authenticity and period accuracy, allegedly said the extensions looked ridiculous and demanded Wahlberg get rid of them immediately. But Wahlberg refused. He had spent nearly 8 hours in the stylist chair getting them installed and didn't see the point in changing now. What started as a minor costume disagreement quickly turned into a full-blown standoff. Scorsese, used to total creative control, was stunned by the pushback. Wahlberg, always known for his blunt and defiant attitude, wasn't about to back down. The tension between them became part of the set's undercurrent. Wahlberg later admitted that he was miserable during the shoot and had only taken the role as a favor to a producer friend. Scorsese, meanwhile, reportedly found Wahlberg's on-set energy difficult to manage. And yet, in one of Hollywood's strangest ironies, the performance born out of that friction ended up being a career milestone. Wahlberg's portrayal of Dignam earned him the only acting nomination from The Departed, a Best Supporting Actor nod at the Oscars. Scorsese finally won his long-overdue Best Director award, and the film took home Best Picture. Though both men have remained cordial in interviews since, they've never worked together again. However, if you thought a hair argument was wild, wait until you hear about the actor Scorsese rejected before the cameras even started rolling.
I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't know. Maybe because there's better actors out there now.
Ryan O'Neal. Some actors clash with Martin Scorsese on set. Others don't even make it that far. Ryan O'Neal falls into the second category, and his meeting with Scorsese has gone down as one of the most infamous misfires in casting history. In the late 1970s, Scorsese was preparing to make Raging Bull, a film that would become one of his most personal and powerful works. Based on the life of boxer Jake LaMotta, the story was not just about fights in the ring, it was about rage, jealousy, obsession, and the emotional damage a man can inflict on those closest to him. Ryan O'Neal, at the time, was at the height of his fame. After starring in Love Story in 1970 and Paper Moon in 1973, he had earned a reputation as the ultimate clean-cut leading man. Audiences loved his charm. Studios trusted his box office pull. But none of that prepared him for the gritty, punishing role of Jake LaMotta, the violent, self-loathing boxer at the center of Scorsese's most personal project to date. Scorsese didn't want a hero. He wanted raw brutality, an actor unafraid to be ugly, unlikable, and broken on screen. Raging Bull was never meant to glorify boxing. It was a study of rage, jealousy, and inner collapse. When O'Neal sat down with Scorsese, it became clear he didn't understand that. According to industry insiders, O'Neal questioned whether the character really had to be that unlikable. He reportedly floated the idea of softening LaMotta's violent edge to make him more sympathetic to audiences. That suggestion didn't just miss the mark, it demolished it. Scorsese, who had been fighting for years to get this uncompromising story made, was said to be stunned. He ended the meeting quickly. Later, when asked about it, Scorsese allegedly remarked, "If you're worried about being liked, you're in the wrong room." That meeting marked a dead end. O'Neill was never seriously considered again. The role went to Robert De Niro, who physically transformed himself and won an Oscar for a performance that's still studied in acting schools around the world. The Ryan O'Neill misfire became more than just a story about a meeting gone wrong. It turned into a parable about the kind of emotional vulnerability and grit Scorsese demands from his actors. He doesn't want a polished image. He wants truth, even if it's ugly. And while O'Neill's star would continue to shine for a time, it never crossed paths with Scorsese's orbit again. Their brief interaction serves as a cautionary tale. In a Martin Scorsese film, there's no room for vanity. Meanwhile, Scorsese's casting frustrations didn't end there. His next near miss came from a surprising name, a rubber-faced comic who wanted to be taken seriously: Jim Carrey. What happens when two brilliant artists speak completely different creative languages? Well, you're about to hear exactly what it turns out to be using the case between Martin Scorsese and Jim Carrey, a pairing that, on paper, could have made Hollywood history, but in reality, never even got off the ground. In the early 2000s, two films about billionaire inventor and aviator Howard Hughes were in development at the same time. One was The Aviator, eventually directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Leonardo DiCaprio. The other was an ambitious project from Christopher Nolan, with Jim Carrey as the lead.
Are you on the list? No, but I believe my friends are. Perhaps you know them. Franklin, Grant, and...
Carrey, best known for comedies like The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber, was desperate to break into serious drama in a big way. He had already stunned critics with his performance in The Truman Show in 1998 and Man on the Moon in 1999, showing he could be more than just a slapstick star. He believed Howard Hughes was his next great dramatic role, and Nolan reportedly agreed, calling Carrey born to play the part. But there was a problem. Scorsese's project moved faster and had more industry support. The Aviator, backed by Miramax and Warner Brothers, had a bigger budget and a powerful team behind it. Leonardo DiCaprio, who had already worked with Scorsese on Gangs of New York, was all in. As a sign of respect to Scorsese, Nolan stepped away from his version of the film. So why didn't Scorsese consider Jim Carrey for the role? Industry insiders believe the answer lies in their completely different working styles. Jim Carrey is known for improvising, for letting loose in the moment, and for building characters from deep within himself. Scorsese, by contrast, is extremely structured. He plans every scene down to the smallest detail and expects actors to trust his vision completely. In interviews over the years, Scorsese has mentioned that some actors create within their own universe, suggesting that while they may be brilliant, they don't fit into his tightly controlled filmmaking approach. While he never named Carrey directly, many in the industry believe that's exactly who he was talking about. The Howard Hughes project could have brought them together. Instead, it became a quiet Hollywood what-if. Carrey never worked with Scorsese, and it's likely he never will. Not because of dislike, but because their artistic worlds orbit on different planes. James Caan. In the mid-1970s, James Caan was riding high. Fresh off The Godfather and Rollerball, he was one of the most in-demand actors in Hollywood, famous for his fiery presence and rebellious energy. Martin Scorsese, still early in his career, saw potential in Caan for a gritty, personal project set in New York's Little Italy. It could have been a powerful pairing. But the partnership collapsed before a single frame was shot. The conflict? Creative control. Scorsese believed in sticking closely to the script, treating it as the backbone of the film. Caan, by contrast, thrived on improvisation. He often rewrote lines on set, trusting his instincts more than the page. On this planned project, that difference became impossible to ignore. Caan would alter lines during rehearsal. Scorsese, fiercely protective of his writer's work, pushed back immediately. The two clashed, again and again. What Caan saw as natural, Scorsese saw as disruptive. And what Scorsese called discipline, Caan called rigid. Neither man would budge. Eventually, Scorsese walked away from the film. The project was shelved indefinitely. In later interviews, Caan admitted, "We just didn't click." Scorsese never brought up the film publicly again. It remains one of the great what could have been moments in his career, a reminder that not every talented actor fits into Scorsese's vision. And sometimes, even when a film does get made, the fallout can be just as dramatic. The next actor brought Scorsese one of his biggest headaches before the cameras even started rolling: Winona Ryder. By the early 1990s, Winona Ryder wasn't just famous, she was everywhere. After standout performances in Beetlejuice, Heathers, and Edward Scissorhands, Ryder had become one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. She had that rare mix of intelligence, vulnerability, and mystery that made directors line up to work with her. But her role in The Age of Innocence, a period drama directed by Martin Scorsese, would end up being one of the most emotionally difficult and creatively tense experiences of her career.
It would take just, I don't know what to screw this up, and that's what was so scary about going into it, but it really turned out to be just what I...
At first, it all seemed like a perfect fit. Scorsese was stepping away from his usual world of gangsters and street crime to tackle something completely different, a slow, emotional film based on Edith Wharton's novel set in 1870s New York. This wasn't Taxi Driver. It wasn't Goodfellas. This was a story about rules, appearances, and the pain of love left unspoken. Winona was cast as Mae Welland, a young woman engaged to the main character, Newland Archer, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. On the surface, Mae is quiet and proper, the very image of innocence. But Scorsese saw something deeper. He believed Mae was calculating, able to hide her feelings behind perfect manners and polite silence. Winona had a different view. She believed Mae was someone who was also heartbroken and afraid, someone doing her best in a world that gave women very little power. That's where the conflict began. From the first week of shooting, their visions clashed. Scorsese gave precise instructions on tone, movement, and expression. Every glance, every pause, every breath had meaning. He needed restraint. Winona, however, wanted to explore Mae's emotional pain. She didn't want the character to seem cold or manipulative. She saw her as quietly suffering. That difference in interpretation caused long delays and mounting frustration. One major breaking point came during the filming of the engagement party scene at the Grand van der Luyden mansion. Scorsese reportedly stopped production for 6 hours, trying to guide Ryder toward a specific emotional tone. He whispered to her between takes, sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes straight. Crew members said she would return to the set with red eyes, drained, only to be told the take still wasn't right. Scorsese was always known for being a perfectionist, but on The Age of Innocence, this perfectionism became especially intense. Production designer Dante Ferretti later said that the pressure was noticeable, especially during Ryder's scenes. Every time she stepped on set, the energy shifted. There was tension. There was uncertainty. Another difficult moment came during the scene where Mae tells Newland she's pregnant, a pivotal moment in the film. Scorsese wanted Mae to deliver the line with quiet confidence, like she knew exactly what she was doing and why. He saw it as the moment when Mae's hidden power finally came to light. but Ryder played the scene with trembling sadness, as if May were scared and unsure. The emotional reading was different, and once again, Scorsese wasn't satisfied. Even behind the camera, the tension continued. Script supervisor Martha Pinson later said that Ryder kept searching for the character's heart, some trace of softness the director didn't seem interested in. To Scorsese, May's strength was her control. To Ryder, that control felt cold and unnatural. In the end, Ryder gave a performance that was widely praised. She earned an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress in 1994. But despite the success, there were signs that things hadn't gone smoothly. Ryder was mostly absent from the film's promotional campaign. She didn't join Scorsese on the DVD commentary. And after The Age of Innocence, Scorsese never worked with her again. When asked about Ryder years later, Scorsese was polite but honest. He said she was brilliant, but not the right fit for that role. In his words, even when the performance is strong, the process of getting there can be so difficult that you don't want to go through it again. Their creative styles simply didn't match. And for Scorsese, that kind of disconnect can be harder to manage than any bad review. Studio executives, Martin Scorsese's real enemy. We've counted down actors who clashed with Martin Scorsese, but the single greatest and most prolonged creative battles of his career were not with any actor. They were with the money men, the studio heads who repeatedly tried to sand down his vision for commercial appeal. Our number one spot is not a person, but a composite antagonist, the Hollywood studio system. No project captures this conflict more than Gangs of New York, released in 2002. Scorsese had dreamed of making the film since the 1970s. It was a gritty, violent tale of immigrant life, gang wars, and American identity in 19th century New York. But once he finally got a green light from Miramax, the real trouble began with producer Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein constantly interfered. He questioned everything, from Daniel Day-Lewis's intense performance to the look of the sets and even the gang name Dead Rabbits. But the biggest clash came over the film's length. Scorsese's first cut ran over 3.5 hours. Weinstein forced him to trim it down to under 3 hours. The back and forth was so stressful that Scorsese later said in a GQ interview, "I realized I couldn't make movies like that anymore. I'd be dead. So I decided it was over." Though he returned in 2006 with The Departed, the battle with studios continued. Warner Brothers executives loved the film until they saw the ending. With both main characters dead, they realized there would be no sequel. According to Scorsese, they were very sad. He added, "Which means I can't work here anymore." These ongoing fights pushed Scorsese away from traditional studios. He turned to independent backers and later to streaming platforms like Netflix and Apple, which gave him full creative freedom on films like The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese's issues with actors were intense, but temporary. His fight with the studios was deeper. It was about control, vision, and the right to tell honest stories. And in the end, despite their pressure to cut corners and aim for blockbusters, Scorsese stuck to his path. But now we want to hear from you. Which of these clashes surprised you the most? Was it the hair-raising tale of Mark Wahlberg's extensions, or the legendary story of Ryan O'Neal's failed audition? Let us know in the comments below.